My name is Napoleon. To some, I became a symbol of genius. To others, an example of boundless ambition. I was born in the year 1769 on the island of Corsica, in the city of Ajaccio. My family belonged to a noble but impoverished Corsican lineage. We took pride in our roots, our land, our spirit of freedom. My childhood was steeped in an atmosphere of constant struggle. Corsica either fought for independence or submitted to France. This land taught me to love freedom, but also to understand the reality of power. When I was 9 years old, I left my native island to study in France. I enrolled in the military school in Brienne. There, I was an outsider. My Corsican accent, my poverty, my reserved nature made me a target for mockery. But I did not respond with fists. I studied. I devoured books on history, mathematics, military strategy. I dreamed not merely of surviving. I dreamed of rising above everyone. At 15, I graduated from the school and continued my education at the Paris Military Academy. At 16, I earned the rank of second lieutenant of artillery. My career began modestly, but I saw a path stretching far beyond barracks and fortifications. When the French Revolution erupted, I was still very young. The revolution upended the old order. Blood flowed through the streets of Paris. Kings fell, nobles fled. I saw in this both horror and opportunity. The old barriers crumbled, and now talent could matter more than birth. I decided that my time had come. My first taste of glory came at Toulon. In the year 1793, the city rebelled against the revolution and surrendered to the British. I devised a plan for the assault, positioning batteries to block the port. Toulon fell. I was noticed. They made me a brigadier general. I was 24 years old. When a new revolt broke out in Paris, I was entrusted with defending the convention. I ordered artillery to be placed in the streets and crushed the uprising in a matter of hours. Napoleon's grape shot, as they later called it, that was my ticket to power. I was appointed general of the Army of Italy. It was demoralized, hungry, poorly armed, but I believed in it. I instilled in the soldiers a faith in victory. We launched a campaign against Austria. We defeated them time after time at Monologue, Lodi, Arcole, Rivoli. I was always at the forefront. I shared the hardships with my soldiers. I spoke their language. Italy witnessed a new conqueror. I did not merely win on the battlefield. I created new republics, reformed laws, abolished feudal systems. I dreamed of a new Europe, free, rational, united under one idea. I was welcomed back in Paris as a hero. They idolized me. But I knew the love of the people is fleeting. To remain great, one must keep moving forward. I conceived an expedition to Egypt. I wanted to cut England off from India, open new trade routes, and challenge the British Empire where it least expected a blow. We set sail from Toulon with an army and a fleet. I studied maps, ancient books, travelers' accounts. Egypt beckoned me. We landed in Alexandria, marched through deserts, fought at the pyramids. I told my soldiers, 40 centuries look down upon you from the tops of these pyramids. Those were more than words. It was a sense of destiny. We defeated the Mamluks, but the British fleet under Nelson destroyed our fleet at the Battle of Aboukir. We were cut off from France. I tried to establish a foothold, reformed Egypt's administration, founded the Institute of Egypt, where scholars studied antiquities, nature, and society. But the situation in France was shifting. The Directory was weak, the people discontented. I realized my place was there. I left the army, returned in secret, crossing the Mediterranean on a small ship. Paris greeted me warily, but many awaited a strong hand. I orchestrated a coup. On the 9th of November, in the year 1799, I seized power. The Constitution established the position of First Consul. I took it. In effect, I became the ruler of France. I had no intention of stopping. I reformed the laws. I created the Civil Code, the Code Napoleon. This set of laws organized property rights, freedom of conscience, civil liberties. I restructured finances, reconciled the church and the state, founded the lycée, a new system of education. But behind the peace loomed a threat. Coalitions of European powers refused to recognize me. I gathered an army. We crossed the Alps through the St. Bernard Pass and defeated the Austrians at Marengo. This solidified my power. I held a plebiscite. The people confirmed my position, but I aimed for more. In the year 1804, I crowned myself emperor. The Pope was present, but I placed the crown on my own head. I wanted to show my power came not from God, not from the pontiff. It came from myself and from the people. France became an empire. I devised grand plans. I dreamed of a united Europe, of laws common to all nations, of economic prosperity, of peace under the French banner. But dreams and reality rarely align. After my coronation, I felt I stood at the pinnacle of the world. But every step forward meant a new war. The European powers united against me once more. They could not accept that a revolutionary upstart, a man without ancient roots of power, ruled France and sought to reshape the entire map of the world. I gathered an army, calling it the Grande Armée. These were the finest soldiers in Europe, battle-hardened, devoted to the cause. We marched east. Austria and Russia were preparing their strike. Everything was decided at Austerlitz. It was the 3rd of December in the year 1805. I faced the combined armies of Emperor Francis II of Austria and Emperor Alexander I of Russia. Their forces outnumbered ours nearly twofold, but I knew numerical superiority does not always determine the outcome. I feigned weakness, surrendered the heights, gave them confidence. They attacked and fell into my trap. My army divided them, surrounded them, crushed them. The victory was absolute. Austerlitz became my masterpiece. The emperors of Austria and Russia were forced to acknowledge my dominance. I created the Confederation of the Rhine, effectively dismantling the Holy Roman Empire. Europe was transforming under my hands, but glory breeds envy, and every victory creates new enemies. England remained untouchable. The sea was hers. After the defeat of the French fleet at Trafalgar in the year 1805, I realized I could not take England by sea. So I devised the continental blockade, an economic isolation. I ordered all European nations to cease trade with England. I hoped to strangle her economically. But England found ways to circumvent it. Spain became a problem. I invaded, placing my brother Joseph on the throne. The Spanish responded with a people's war. In that country, I first encountered guerrillas, a prolonged, dirty war without clear fronts. The Spanish campaign became a heavy burden for me. Meanwhile, discontent grew in Russia over the blockade. Alexander I began seeking ways to restore trade with England. I realized, without decisive action, Russia would become my enemy. I decided to strike first. In the year 1812, I assembled the largest army Europe had ever seen, more than 600,000 men. I called it the Grande Armée. We crossed the Niemen River and entered Russian lands. But Russia is not Europe. Vast expanses, ruined villages, retreating armies. General Frost and scorched earth were my enemies. We won the Battle of Borodino, but we lost too many men. I entered Moscow, empty, burning. The city had been set ablaze by the Russians themselves. I awaited surrender, but it never came. There was no food. The cold grew worse. I made the decision to retreat. It was a nightmare. The frost killed faster than bullets. The army disintegrated. Of 600,000, fewer than 50,000 returned home. My star began to fade. Nearly all of Europe rose against me. Prussia, Austria, Russia, England. They all united. In the year 1813, we met at Leipzig, the Battle of the Nations. I was defeated. I retreated to France, but France was exhausted, depleted. The Allies entered Paris. I abdicated the throne. They exiled me to the island of Elba, a tiny piece of land for a man who dreamed of ruling the world. But I could not remain in exile. In the year 1815, I escaped from Elba. I landed in France with a handful of men, and thus began my final triumph. On the road to Paris, the armies sent to arrest me joined my side. I became emperor once more. The 100 Days began. I knew I had little time. I gathered an army. I marched north to defeat the English before the Prussians could arrive. It all came down to a village called Waterloo. Rain turned the fields to mud. Artillery sank in the mire. My attacks were fierce, but the English held. The Prussians arrived in time. The forces were unequal. My army broke. I lost. I abdicated again, but this time there was no mercy. They sent me far away, to the island of Saint Helena, in the Atlantic Ocean, under English guard. There, amidst winds, fog, and solitude, I spent my final years. I dictated memoirs, reflected on fate, on glory, on power. I died in the year 1821. I was 51 years old. Some will say I was a tyrant, others, a genius. But I was myself. I reached for the heights, for the impossible. I lived not as a man, but as a phenomenon. History will judge me, and I knew I would not be forgotten. What do you think of me after learning my story? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Subscribe, like the video, and stay tuned. We're not saying goodbye yet.